All right, think about this for a second. We spend so much of our lives chasing these super complex solutions to what we see as complex problems. But what if we've got it all backward? Today, we're going to break down this really radical idea from an old sermon. The notion that the most profound truths, they aren't complicated at all. In fact, they're simple, and they're hiding right in plain sight.
And this quote really gets to the heart of it. It's a total paradox, right? It suggests that our whole value system, what we think is great versus what we think is foolish, might be completely upside down from a divine perspective. It really makes you stop and ask, are we chasing the wrong things entirely?
So that leads to a huge question, doesn't it? If these incredibly important truths are out there, why are they so easy to miss? Well, the sermon argues that it's not because the truth is locked away in some complex formula. Nope. It's because we're trained to look for it in these big, shiny, impressive packages. It's like we're so busy admiring the fancy castle that we walk right past the simple clay pot that's actually holding the treasure. All right, so let's get into the core argument, hiding in plain sight. The main idea here is that the divine, or the ultimate truth, intentionally hides itself in simplicity. And this isn't some cruel cosmic joke, it's more like a filter. It causes anyone who's looking for grand, complex signs and intellectual proofs to just miss it entirely.
And get this, according to the source material, this is absolutely by design. The key to understanding isn't found in some dusty library surrounded by formulas and dense textbooks for the wise and prudent. No, it's revealed to babes, people who just have a simple, humble willingness to learn, to accept a truth without needing to tear it apart first. It's a system that basically rewards humility over intellectual pride. Okay, so if the truth is simple, what's the big obstacle? What's stopping us from seeing it? The sermon points a finger at one main culprit, what it calls worldly wisdom. And we're talking about the kind of knowledge that relies completely on human intellect and, hard scientific proof.
And this really lays out the two opposing worldviews. On one side, you've got the world's wisdom. It's all about being high-polished, educated, scientific, intellectual. It's always seeking greatness and complexity, and it praises the things that man builds. But then, on the other side, you have God's simplicity. It's meant for the humble. It's understood by faith. It's simple, and because of that, it's often overlooked. It's found not in what we build, but in what's already been created. The sermon uses this really powerful little story to drive the point home. It's about this intellectual, an infidel named Jim Dorsey, who could debate pretty much anyone on science and philosophy. But he was completely stumped by a little girl holding a flower. I mean, her question was so simple, it was devastating. "Mr. Dorsey, could you tell me how this lives?" And he couldn't. All his worldly wisdom, all that complex knowledge, it was useless in explaining the simple miracle of life he was holding right in his hand.
And the sermon really doesn't pull any punches here. It claims this isn't just some minor error in judgment. Our obsession with intellectual proof causes us to miss the mark by, quote, 1,000,000 miles. We get so busy building our own complex towers of knowledge that we go, as the text says, plumb over the top of the simple truth that's growing right there at our feet.
All right, so let's see how this idea plays out in our real-world example. The sermon brings up a classic story from the Bible, using it as a perfect case study for this whole simplicity thesis. Okay, so the story of Noah's Ark is presented as a perfect blueprint for this thesis, and you can see the pattern laid out right here. First, you get a simple, almost absurd-sounding message. An illiterate farmer is told a flood is coming. Next comes the scientific mockery. The wise of the day prove it's impossible. But then you see simple faith in action. Noah just ignores them and gets to work. And finally, the truth is vindicated. The rain comes, the simple message is proven true, and all that worldly wisdom, well, it perishes. The sermon argues this exact pattern just repeats itself over and over again throughout history.
And then there's another powerful case study, Moses. I mean, you've got a guy who is trained in all the wisdom of Egypt. He was a mighty, talented general, the kind of guy who could teach geniuses. And yet, when he tried to deliver his people using his own strength and his own intellect, he failed, big time. It was only after he was humbled in the desert for 40 years that he was actually ready.
And this is the key lesson the sermon pulls from his story. Moses had to be completely stripped of his own power and his own prestige before he could be used for something greater. His big victory didn't come from his, Ivy League Egyptian education or his military genius. No way!
It came when all of that was gone and he was left with nothing but a simple stick and the faith to actually use it.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The sermon pivots from all this abstract philosophy to a very, very concrete application. It's not just about a mindset, it's about creating an actual physical space that embodies this whole principle of simplicity.
And this is where they really put their money where their mouth is. They translate this whole idea of simplicity into 4 very clear, concrete rules for their own place of worship. I mean, look at this. Each step is about intentionally stripping away the world's complexity. You get rid of the commerce, the idle chatter, the social distractions, all to create a space that's focused on one simple, uncluttered purpose.
And these rules aren't just random or arbitrary. Not at all. Each one is a deliberate defense against that worldly complexity we've been talking about. Banning commerce keeps it a sanctuary, not a marketplace. Quieting the chatter, that encourages actually listening instead of just talking. It's all about building a kind of fortress of simplicity, a place where a quiet, simple truth actually has a chance to be heard over all the noise.
So, after all that, what's the bottom line? What's the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive into the power of simplicity versus complexity?
Well, the sermon's final message is a direct challenge to pretty much all of our modern instincts. Think about it. We're trained to seek out more data, more complex solutions, more sophisticated knowledge for all of our problems. But this text suggests that maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't out there in the next big discovery. Maybe it's already right here, hidden in something we've dismissed as being way too simple to even matter.
And that really leaves us with a final provocative thought to chew on. In our own lives, as we're all trying to navigate a world that just relentlessly rewards complexity and sophistication, what simple, profound truths might we be missing? What answers are hiding right there in front of us, just waiting for us to finally quiet down long enough to notice?